He wanted you to read this in secret to your son. The president asked me to tell you so.
2 weeks after my husband passed away suddenly from exhaustion, his secretary handed me a letter. When I checked the letter, I found that it contained a note of thanks and a request to go to a certain warehouse. I followed the instructions and went to the warehouse. There was a young man about the same age as my son. He smiled at me and told me a shocking truth. My name is Michael. I married my current husband, Matthew, when I was 35 years old. It was my first marriage, but my husband remarried. He had a child who was 4 years old at the time. His name was Daniel. He was a cute little boy with slender arms and legs. We met through work. I was in sales department, and he was the person in charge of a company to which I made a sales call. I had given up on marriage because I was over 30 years old, and I had a disease that made it impossible for me to have children.
I want you to marry me.
His eyes were serious as he said this, and I could not look away from them. But I am an old woman now. I can't even have children.
That doesn't matter. Michael is a good worker, and above all, kind-hearted. I told you that I have a son, didn't I? I want him to know a mother. I can trust you with my son. Besides, you're very attractive as a woman, too.
Looking back on it now, it sounds like a toothless line, but at the time, I gladly accepted his proposal. Perhaps I was more happy that I was going to have a child than anything else. Before I got married, I met his son. At first, he hid behind his father, but as we talked and ate together, he gradually opened up to me.
Can I call you Mom?
Can you call me Mom?
I've never had a mother before, so I'd like to call you. No good?
The way he tilted his head was adorable, and my heart ached. I hugged the boy tightly. I'm looking forward to living with you, Daniel.
Yes.
Please let me be a part of your circle.
He hugged me strongly on top of us hugging each other. I had thought that I would have to live alone because I could no longer hope to have children. But he told me that there was a new form of family. Then we got married. My husband had a dream. He wanted to start his own business and be successful. I wanted to support his dream, so I continued to work and kept busy with housework, childcare, and work. My husband often struggled with cash flow, and I worked frantically to support the family finances. When sales were inevitably slow, there were months when my husband had no income. I didn't blame him for it, and we struggled to make ends meet. Breaking down my monthly salary and the savings and insurance we had accumulated up to that point, even in such a situation, my son listened to me and became a fine person. I could not afford to send him to cram school, but he studied hard and maintained good grades.
It's thanks to you, Mom, for taking care of my study.
You are working hard, aren't you? I'm just watching from the side.
You're always there for me even though you're busy.
He humbly said that, even though his ability is his own. I accepted his words, even though I felt a little uncomfortable. And then, after 20 years of hard work, my husband's efforts finally bore fruit. His business got on track, and he became the president of the company. I was really happy and called for a family celebration. I baked a cake, which I don't usually make that day, and prepared a slightly pretentious menu for the dinner table. I really wanted to go to a restaurant, but I still thought ahead and decided to save money, so I prepared a special menu that we could eat at home. My son was very happy to see such a dining table. But, Dad, I heard he can't come home today.
I see. It can't be helped if the star of the show isn't here.
Yay.
Let's eat, Mom. Today's food looks really delicious. And the cake is my favorite cake with strawberries on it.
Seeing me depressed, my son tried to cheer me up and talk to me in a happy voice. I was cheered up by this, and we finished dinner together that day. When my husband came home the next day, he smelled slightly of alcohol. This smell, have you been drinking?
No, it's just that everyone at work is celebrating. I'm going to take a shower.
My husband was somewhat distant and hurriedly headed for the bathroom. I was suspicious, but started to get ready and sent my husband and son out of the house. A few days later, my cell phone displayed the phone number of my husband's company. If he needed something, I got a call from my husband's mobile phone, so I picked up the phone, even though I was suspicious.
Is that you, his wife, our president?
It was a call to inform me that my husband had collapsed at work. I rushed to the hospital where I was instructed to go, but could not make it in time. By the time I arrived at the hospital, my husband had already passed away.
I heard from his secretary that he had been working very hard. The cause of death was probably overwork.
I just listened intently to the doctor's words telling me so. Then my son rushed to the hospital, and we broke down in tears, hugging each other. The sudden death of my husband of 20 years was sad and painful. The funeral was over, and time passed quickly. 2 weeks had passed since my husband's death, and we were still going about our daily lives, still in a state of grief, when a person claiming to be my husband's secretary came to visit us.
It's been a long time.
Thank you for coming all the way to see me. Can I help you?
I know this is sudden and rude, but the president gave me this. He said to give it to you if anything should happen to him.
What he handed me was a letter. What is this?
He wanted you to read this in secret to your son.
What?
The president had told me to tell you so. I think it is probably from the president.
I see. But why? Why would he prepare a letter?
I have not heard the contents of the letter either. I have returned the items entrusted to me by the president, so I will leave now.
The secretary bowed his head and left. I opened the letter in wonder.
If Michael is reading this, I must no longer exist in this world. First of all, I want to thank you. Thank you for raising Daniel.
That is how my husband's letter was written out. Then, in the main body of the letter, it states that he wants me to head to the warehouse he has designated. Since there was no reason given in the letter, I thought it was my husband's last will and testament, and headed there. It was the warehouse of my husband's company. While I was standing in front of the warehouse, wondering what was in here, I was approached by a young man. The young man had short black hair, and the appearance of a young man these days. He was wearing a uniform with the name of the company embroidered on it.
Are you the president's wife?
Yes, my husband willed me to come here.
I've been expecting you. Please come this way.
The young man led me in with a smile. I was led to the guest room. He asked me to sit on the sofa, and I sat at the end of the sofa. The young man made me a cup of coffee and sat down in front of me. The letter told me to come here all of a sudden, and I don't really understand it either. Do you know why I was asked to come here?
Dad didn't tell you why.
What, Dad?
I'm the president's son. Well, the son of a mistress.
What? I could not hide my surprise at the suddenness of the situation. I was not sure what was going on, so I asked the young man back. What do you mean? Are you his son? And he had a mistress?
Yes. My mother has been dating him since before you married my father, even before he married his ex-wife. She's like an illegitimate common-law wife.
What do you mean? I could not understand, but the young man explained to me with a smirk. My husband had been dating the young man's mother, Mary, for a long time. However, his mother was very opposed to the marriage. His mother told him to marry a woman from the right family and forced my husband into an arranged marriage. Then his ex-wife became pregnant and gave birth without incident. However, my husband secretly took Mary as his mistress and had an affair with her. The ex-wife realized this fact after the childbirth and divorced him. But the child was a boy. That was Daniel. His mother forcibly separated Daniel from his ex-wife, saying that she would make her grandson her heir and want custody of him. But just then, the mistress also found out she was pregnant. The child in her belly is a boy, and that is Andrew, the young man in front of me now. My husband pressed the mistress to raise his son and marry him, but she refused, saying that she would never want to raise someone else's child. His mother and my husband, who did not want to bear the burden of raising the child themselves, decided to marry again and have a second wife. The plan was to have the wife raise the son, and then his wife was me.
But my father wanted me to take over the company. Of course he did. It's the child of the woman he loved. That's why I invited you.
What do you mean?
You're not very perceptive, are you? It is true that I am the president's child, but I am unrecognized. That's why I don't have father's inheritance right. I was told to inherit from you.
The young man who said this without hesitation did not seem to be offended in the least. I was simply astonished to hear of his infidelity after my husband's death, and the fact that he even asked me to take care of him. Your mother, how is she?
She got sick 5 years ago. She died before my father.
And my husband took care of you all those years.
I don't know. I mean, ever since then. My father didn't send you any money, did he? He put it all in my side. He said it wouldn't be a problem because you could make money.
I bit my lip as the facts were revealed one after another. I can't forgive him for making fun of me like this.
Anyway, I think a lawyer is coming to talk about the inheritance. You can call me too.
The young man said nothing more and kicked me out of the guest room. He pushed me outside and told me to leave. In frustration, I glared at the young man's back as he tried to get back to work. After returning home, I sit alone in the living room with my head in my hands. My husband's many shocks have left me in a state of shock, and I don't know what to say to my son. Just as I sighed and wondered what to say, my son came into the living room.
I'm home. What's wrong, Mom? Why are you sighing?
No, it's nothing. Welcome home. You're home early.
I don't have a part-time job today, so. What's that?
My son noticed my husband's letter spread out on the table and quickly picked it up. Regretting that I had not put it away immediately, I thought of an excuse.
Why is there a letter from my dad? What is this warehouse?
No, it's not. It's probably just a prank.
No, it can't be. This is my father's handwriting. What's going on? You don't hide things from me.
I tried to cover it up, but looking into my son's straight eyes, it was hard for me to keep quiet. So I told him. When I told my son what happened today, he started shaking.
I'm sorry, Mom. My father did such things.
It's not Daniel's fault. It was me who didn't see it.
You don't have to take care of him. I have a plan.
What are you going to do?
Don't worry. I'll take care of it.
I was worried, but he stopped shaking and looked straight at me. I believed and trusted him. Then we were called to the lawyer for the division of property.
Thank you very much for gathering here. We are gathered here today for the distribution of Matthew's property.
The young man, who identified himself as my husband's son, looked at my son with a smirk on his face. The young man, myself, and my son gathered there. I also contacted my mother-in-law, who was already in a facility, but she was not present that day because she had decided to waive her inheritance. The lawyer begins to speak plainly.
First, let's talk about the details of the inheritance.
Oh, okay. I'll just sign it. You're going to disinherit it, aren't you?
The young man looked at us and urged.
I renounce my inheritance.
I also renounce my inheritance. I will also adopt Andrew and transfer all my property to him.
I will inherit it. I'll sign it now, so hurry up. I have schedules after this.
I need to talk to you first. I will adopt you for the inheritance, but I want you to terminate the adoption as soon as the inheritance is completed. I don't want to take care of you.
I get it. I'm not interested in a relationship with you. You don't have any property. Just make sure it's done that way.
The young man asked the lawyer. The lawyer accepted the request and, perhaps having already heard about it from my husband, produced the documents for adoption and inheritance that he had prepared. We signed it and done. The young man left as soon as it was over, and we went home too. After a month of living a normal life, I started receiving numerous phone calls from a non-telephone number. I was suspicious about it, but spent my time ignoring them. We were having dinner together when the chime rang. Who could it be at this hour?
I'll go and check.
My son took the initiative and followed him to the front door. When he opened the front door, to my surprise, There was that young man.
Hey, what's going on?
The young man shouted as soon as his eyes met mine.
You're disturbing the neighbors. What do you want?
It's my father's inheritance. It's nothing. It's rather negative. They said the company was profitable, but it wasn't. That's not what they said.
What are you talking about? We were never told anything about my father's company.
You knew and you disinherited him. That lying son of a bitch. I'm still in debt at my age.
It's not our fault. Please leave. It is a nuisance. If you make any more noise, I will call the police.
My son responded firmly to the yelling young man and successfully drove him away. The young man left, yelling repeatedly. Perhaps he was trying to harass us. He's only just found out.
It's his fault for not listening to the end.
He shrugged his shoulders and went back to the living room. Seeing my son's back, I felt resilient. 6 months later, my husband's secretary came to visit me.
I am sorry to keep coming back to you. I just thought you should know.
I led the secretary, who bowed his head in agreement, into the guest room. I offered him a cup of coffee and asked him about his story. At first, the young man was doing whatever he wanted, taking advantage of the fact that he had become the president of the company. When he found out that the accounting was in the red and that he needed to start the next business, he became furious. He had no management skills, and the company went under. He told me that the young man was currently unaccounted for, but that since he was also carrying my husband's personal debts, he must have gone bankrupt somewhere. When I heard this, I realized that life doesn't go well when you are raised by bad parents. My son seemed to feel the same way.
I'm glad you were there for me, Mom. If you hadn't been there for me, I might have ended up like that.
It'll be fine. You've always been strong. You will be fine. I smiled, and my son laughed as if he was relieved. We have been living peacefully ever since. I adopted my son. It may be a small amount, but since I am still working, I would like to leave a legacy for my son. However, my son is employed by a well-known foreign-affiliated enterprise.
I'll earn the money myself.
My son works very hard. With such a reliable son, I will continue to live modestly and peacefully.